We do a segment here each week. Well, no, not each week. Once a month, called Props or Slops. Basically, we give a friend of the community the opportunity to give us props on something recent that's happening within the comic book industry, some praise that you have to give, or slops. Slops is like anything that's happening recently in the comic book industry or the pop culture industry that you just want to completely dog and just kind of trash. So we are very happy to have Matt Forge from Pressable Defects. We had Jay DeButcha a couple weeks ago giving us his all in. We got Matt Forge giving us his props or slops. And it's a very interesting subject, Chris, that I would like you to tee up because it's kind of like something you're really kind of investigating these days.
Yeah. So Matt Forge touched on it, and that's the idea of what's going on with the hype of the second, third, and fourth prints. So before we're going to give our opinions, but we're going to go into what Matt Forge had to say. This is a topic that is very man. How do I say that? It's got a lot of tentacles coming out from it. I mean, it's deep, muddy waters, so to say. But Jeff, should we let them see what Matt Forge had to say?
We're going to roll the tape. Matt has an opinion, and we all want you to hear it. Here we go. Props or slops?
All right, Chris and Jeff. So props or slops, in true Pressable Defects form, I'm going to go slops, okay? And what do I have to talk about? What's really been ticking me off lately, and this goes out to the publishers and to the comic book collectors, is how second, third, fourth, fifth, 29th prints have now become more valuable than the first print. I just don't understand it. How did we get to this point? And, I understand in certain circumstances where that's a valid thing. There are a few examples where that makes sense. One that comes to mind is the Captain Marvel 17, which is, like the second cameo of Kamala Khan. That second print, the first print was pretty low print run, and the second print was pretty scarce, and it wasn't hot right away. This was years ago, so people weren't so into that grab every issue, like they are today because they're afraid to miss something. But that cover was at least an original cover, right? Now what they do is they're just recycling an interior page, throwing it on the cover, and now all of a sudden Venom 3 third print is first cover appearance of Null. It's an interior page. At least make it an original art right on the cover. Then maybe it's valuable. Now it's something you haven't seen before, not just a recycled page. I mean, the publishers, that's what they're there for. They're there to make money. I get it. So anytime they're going to have the opportunity to make money, like put a second printing out, there's a lot of people buying it. Put a third printing out, a lot of people are buying it. I get it. That's their job. They have shareholders. They're only there really to make money at the end of the day. But us as collectors, if we keep buying them, they're going to keep making them. So we got to look in the mirror and say, should we keep buying these second, third, fourth, fifth prints? I mean, there's a second print with a ratio variant, for God's sakes, in Venom. It makes no sense. So if we keep buying them, they're going to keep printing them, and now it's starting to trickle down. It's not only new books, but it's going back to previous books. And I'll go back to the Kamala Khan reference. All new Marvel .1. The first print and the second print, they were always pretty even. The second print was just a tad bit lower than that first print. Now, all of a sudden, a 9.8 second print is going for almost double what the first print is going for. And it's a trickle-down effect. So you're being rewarded now for being late to the party, for missing that book on New Comic Book Day where all of a sudden it's boom, this new character came out. And you have to get it, the next, the 3 or 4 weeks later when they release that second print. And it's kind of like sloppy seconds. And everybody knew that, you were late to the party. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, holy shit, I was late to party. And now my book is worth almost double what the first print was worth. That kills me. I think it's just a bad way for the community to be going right now because it's just a straight money grab. There's nothing else to it. There are very rare circumstances where I understand where that second print can be very valuable. If the series was a slow series to begin with, if that first print was a low number to begin with, And then all of a sudden the second print, which, you know, they shouldn't even have probably printed and no one really grabbed it. I understand that. But a series like Venom, everybody's grabbing it. A series like Thor, everyone's grabbing it. So why are these second, third, and fourth, and fifth prints even more expensive than the first? It makes no sense. So comic book community, we got to be better than that. And Chris and Jeff, that's my slop for Props or Slops. And I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to come on Comic Book Canon and vent this because it fucking pisses me off.
So happy he came on. That's definitely a topic of interest to all of us here, right? But first of all, before we get into this topic, I see some opinions in the comments already. Y'all need to be following Pressable Defects in the comments below, or in the description below. There's a link to Pressable Defects. They're gonna hit their 1,000 subs mark soon. Their 500 subs mark. Their giveaways were insane. So if it's anything at least similar to that or above that, you guys will want to be following because their giveaway will be amazing. Anyways. So, Chris, let's get into it right now, man. Slops. Matt, slops on multiple prints here and grabbing, because it's a cop. It's lazy. Grabbing cover art or grabbing interior art, putting on the cover. Here's the second print. Third print, fourth print, fifth print.
Yeah. So much there that I took notes, you know, because there's so many ways to attack this. First off, you know, to Matt's, in his defense, I think he brought a lot of things up that I agree with in terms of how I collect. I have never, I don't grow. I was just talking about this in the pre-show on my channel, showing off some of the variants that I bought of the new books. Like these are the cover B variants that are cover price, right? And I go with the variant if I like the art better than the cover A. I don't buy it because of some other hype. It's just because I like that book better. So if I'm buying variants, it's simply because I enjoy the art. It's not for any other reason. So I'm not one that goes after second prints, third prints for some speculative value just because they have a different cover on them or whatever the case may be. But there's a lot of different ways to look at this. And I think the key way to look at this for us as collectors is to understand what this means for the hobby as a business and as an industry. One, I like what Matt said about publishers versus collectors. This is not, you know, you can't put blame and say, I don't like that this is happening. Publishers, why are you doing this? Well, to Matt's point, the collectors are speaking with their purchasing power. They're going to do whatever they feel is going to make them money. And at the end of the day, even if it's a money grab, what are companies like Marvel and DC and Image supposed to do? Make money, sell books. How many books are they supposed to sell? As many books as they possibly can because they're a business and that's what they're here to do. And the more books they sell, honestly, the better it is for us as collectors because it keeps the hobby healthy. All right, let me say one thing too, what I feel the industry has grown and evolved from that they're not doing right now, that where it could be worse, and that's printing 5 to 8 million copies of a first print. So let's just acknowledge and say, well, I'm glad that they're not doing that anymore. I'm glad that they're doing second and third and fourth prints and not doing millions of copies of a first print, because then we'd be back in the 90s and our books would be worthless. There it is, right? But let's dive into this a little further. Matt talked about them taking interior pages of a first appearance on, say, issue number 3 is the first appearance of X. And then that character doesn't show up on a cover, but 2 months later, or 2 months later, the character's been in the books, but 2 months later, they decide to release a variant issue of that same issue number 3, that's the first appearance, and take interior work out of that and make a third print variant of it and now call that the first cover appearance. That's a bit lazy. So to Matt's point, why not? Look, variants are very popular right now. They've been popular for years now, and I don't think the hype on variants is going away anytime soon. Why not just get an artist to do a fresh variant cover, even if it's a second and third print of a specific issue. That way, at least you have something that's new, that's fresh, and you're not just being lazy, like you said. So I give them credit for that there. I'm going to talk about burnout. And this is the biggest issue that I think where Matt's frustration on this where he can have a valid point, and that's burnout. Remember Beanie Babies. Remember Trolls. You get these things to where people start flocking into these things because they think that there's going to be one thing there and one thing only, and that's some type of value. Now, regardless if they're mass marketed or not, people get caught up on print runs for comic books. It's not just about print run. It's about what's available on the market. There could be a book that has a print run of 200 and nobody wants the book. Just because it's a print run of 200 doesn't mean it's going to be valuable. Nobody's going to be able to sell it for 2 pennies if nobody wants it. So when you look at something like this, where they are now saying, let's do a second print and a third print and a fourth print and change the cover art, get some interior cover, call it a first cover appearance and all this stuff. And if the reason why they're going up in value right now is simply because people are jumping on them because they think it's going to make them get rich, the negative thing that could come out of that is a year from now, all these people that spent all this money, and remember, they're not just spending cover price. You have books that came out a couple weeks ago that are selling for $50, $100, $200. And if they're spending that money now, in a year from now, that threshold doesn't hold up and people get burnt out, then you're going to have books sitting there and nobody wanting to buy into this, not the hobby as a whole, but into this piece of the hobby, and the value of these books are going to decrease. Now, I do have one more point, but Jeff, did you want to jump in there?
There's a lot of opinions in the comments here. I'd love to share them. No, finish your point. Definitely.
Okay, so
you are on a roll, and
right. So,
valid points here, man.
Okay, so two final things here. I will say though, you have to be humble to the reason why these books aren't getting to become more expensive as a second or third print just because of somebody lying to us or publishers lying to us. Look, it's all marketing, it's all advertising and whatnot. They're trying to make money. The reason why the prices are increasing is because, like Matt says, we're buying them still. So if we want to set the tone of what's valuable and what's not, it's going to be up to what we do with our purchasing power. So we can't get mad necessarily the fact that the second and third prints are more valuable, but we can dissect the reason why this is happening and have valid concerns. Here's my final point. My final point is this. Matt brought up the Marvel Point 1, and this is where I disagree with that being used as an example, but I still understand where he's coming from. I think the Marvel Point 1 second print being worth going for more than the first now is kind of more of a natural supply and demand market impact. And I say that because of this. Like Matt said, that book is some years old now. It's like, what, 5, 6 years old? So what happened was the first print starts increasing in value and it becomes unattainable to a certain extent. People start going after the second printing. And once people start going after the second printing, they realize that that second printing has a lower print run. So now that the demand is going up and the supply is going down, the rarity is smaller than the first printing as well. So that's more of a natural effect of that second printing value being more than the first. So I actually think the Marvel Point 1 second printing value being more than the first is more of an organic, natural example of where it's healthy for a second printing to become more valuable than the first. They didn't do any gimmicks with the cover. They just called it a second printing and changed the bar to blue instead of red, to where, like I said, right now, you have these books right now coming straight off the press and people are buying into the hype of it, not knowing if that demand is going to last long term. That's where it can be questionable. That's where we can be walking on eggshells here if we are those collectors right now that are investing in money. So I'm going to close out by saying this. If you guys are collectors and you're hopping on the hype train of these second and third and fourth prints merely because you think that they're going to be worth more value than the first, that's what's going to skew the value of these books in the long term, and you're probably going to sell yourself short.